Thanks everybody for joining. You are on today's webinar, How to Create Complete Streets from Policy to Practice. My name is Amelia Neptune. I'm the director of the Bicycle Friendly America program with the League of American Bicyclists, and I am very excited to be hosting today's webinar. Just a couple quick housekeeping notes. We are recording, and we will be posting the recording onto the League's YouTube channel, as well as onto our webinar archives, and everyone who registered will receive a copy via email. So thank you for registering, and please feel free to share out the recording afterwards. Closed captions should be available, and you can hide those or turn them on or off to your liking at any point. And we will be doing moderated Q&A at the end, so please feel free to type in your questions to the Q&A box at any time. We'll try to respond in real time via chat if we can, and otherwise we will get to those at the very end of the call, but they are welcome at any time. And before we dive into our presentations with our excellent speakers, I just wanted to introduce the League of American Bicyclists in case you're new to us. We are a national nonprofit advocacy organization leading the movement to create a bicycle-friendly America for everyone. We've been doing this work since 1880. We were originally founded to advocate for the very first paved roads in the nation, and today our mission is very similar, making biking better for everyone, whether you're biking for transportation, fun, or fitness. And so we welcome you all to today's webinar and invite you to join the League as members to support our work. And now I am very excited to introduce our two speakers who are experts on the topic. Today we will be hearing from Dustin Robertson from Smart Growth America. He's their Thriving Communities Program Manager. And then we'll be hearing from Mike Sule, the Executive Director of Asheville on Bikes, a local bike advocacy organization in Asheville, North Carolina. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Dustin. Thanks.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for that introduction, Amelia. All right, folks, it is my pleasure to talk to you about complete streets. It's my job, it's my passion, it's something that I think is very important, and I'm happy to share it with you in this webinar today. So this is, we've got over 100 people in this virtual room here. So there's probably differing levels of understanding and awareness about complete streets, what that exactly means. For some people, it may be their job and their passion as well. So it's going to be very much, speaking to the choir in review. Other people are going to be much less informed on the subject. So I'm going to try to hit right down the middle and give a little bit of something for everybody. And I'm eager to hear any questions, comments you have. As Amelia says, you can put them in chat or wait till the end and ask them yourself. So, kick things off. This is a little drawing depiction of some elements that we think Complete Streets approach can give. So, as Amelia said, I'm with Smart Growth America. Smart Growth America does all things smart growth. We look at really land use and transportation and how can we integrate them in a smart way. And within that, I really look at transportation thriving communities and specifically complete streets. And that's what I'm talking to you today about. So let's dive in. First, we're going to make the case for complete streets. There's going to be a little bit of sort of 101 for what do we mean when we say complete streets? What are the benefits of complete streets? Then we're going to get a little more technical and talk about policies. Policy, the P word that scares everybody, or makes your eyes glaze over, but it's a very important thing that we work on a lot. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about how can you get there. So I imagine we have representatives from across the country in this call, and everybody's community may be in a different place. Some places may have a great complete streets policy and they've been doing it for years. For other places, this is a completely foreign concept. So I'm going to try to give some suggestions and advice for all communities. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike, who's going to tell us what this kind of work has actually looked like in his case of Asheville, North Carolina. So start off, Houston, we have a problem. So, as many of you will already know, the way that we do transportation, especially in the US and North America, is it's problematic. All right. For decades now, we've been building to move cars from point A to point B as fast as possible. Everybody else, everything else is sort of secondary. Speed of vehicles is that's the driving force, the MO, that's everything. And it has numerous negative consequences and effects. This is a photo from Houston, Texas, but honestly, you could probably find a similar photo in just about any city and even towns across the country. You can see this is, we've got, I don't even know, dozens of lanes going right over the top of houses. It would be nearly impossible to navigate through in any direction in a place like this if you're not moving in a private automobile. And that's a problem. So, this is a photo that to me sort of represents the way that we've been doing things, the way things have been done, and it sort of suggests some of the really negative consequences. I'm not going to go into the all the details of it, but we're going to do a quick run through of some of the negative consequences that this sort of development has brought about. One of the big ones, one that is very important, and we have been studying it and have been alarmed by it for years, is the increase in pedestrian fatalities. This is a graph showing the increase in pedestrian fatalities over the years. We do a report called Dangerous by Design that comes out every couple of years. You can check it out, Dangerous by Design, Smart North America. We just released in the summer. And in that, we really drill down on pedestrian fatalities, what causes it, what do the numbers look like. Now, this is a League of American Bicyclists call. A similar analysis would probably reveal some alarming statistics about bicycles as well. We do some of that analysis, but our particular report, Dangerous by Design, we really drilled on pedestrian fatalities. And you see here, increase, we're getting close to double where we were in 2010. So this is a very alarming increase that has increased over time, and especially during the pandemic. As some of you all will know, there was less driving during the pandemic, and it might have been expected that, oh, well, less cars on the road, that might lead to less pedestrian fatalities. Incorrect. It actually continued to increase. 2020, 2021, 2022, are seeing a steady increase over time of pedestrian fatalities. So this is a huge problem. Thank you, Amelia, for sharing our report in the chat. And it's not just the overall numbers of fatalities. It's also an equity issue as well, because this is not an issue that affects all people equally. So these are fatality rates for pedestrians, for people of different races and ethnicities. And you can see here that some people, particularly Black African American or American Indian Alaska Natives, are killed at alarmingly much higher rates than the average population. So this is a bad situation that is unfairly and inequitably distributed amongst certain communities. There's other alarming statistics as well. Vulnerable populations such as elderly people are much more likely to be victims of traffic violence as well. And these trends have generally gotten worse along with the overall increase in pedestrian fatalities over the years. So as the statistics, this is what it looks like on the ground. This is just a really brief image of what it looks like, traversing roadways of an American city. This could be any town USA. And I imagine that many of you on this call are bicyclists and have probably encountered places like this. And you can just tell just from this brief snapshot, this is a place that is not designed for anybody outside of a car. We've got no crosswalks, we've got rounded corners, multiple lanes. If you're trying to cross through here in anything but a car, you're not having a good day. And yeah, this is the way we've designed for decades now. And going back to the Dangerous by Design report, I also want to emphasize this is not just a oh, this is a southern city, or this is a northern city, or a western city thing. This is a nationwide problem. So this is a map of all pedestrian deaths between 2008 and 2022. Each dot represents a pedestrian who was killed on the streets. And as you can see, it's pretty much blanketed. The only spaces where you don't see, blue dots are in places where there are mountains or where deserts where nobody's actually living. But this is pretty much covering the country. Some states are a little better, some a little worse, but there's no state that has a clean record in this area. It's a nationwide problem. So what can we do about it? At Smart Growth America, we really promote and propose complete streets. And for us, complete streets is an approach to planning, designing, and building, operating, and maintaining streets, enables access for all people, all emphasized here. That includes people using all modes, pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, transit riders of all ages and abilities. So all communities, people of all ages, all abilities. When you think complete streets means everyone. Traditionally, as I said, we've just been building for the speed of vehicles. Smart Growth America proposes that we need to think about all the people who live or move through an area and how can we accommodate their needs. Really basic depiction, if this is helpful, the image over here on the left before complete streets, that's like a typical highway. You can see there's 4 lanes and no crosswalks. It's going to be really difficult, and there's no bike lane, no any accommodations for anybody outside of a moving vehicle. Over here on the right, we still got the lanes. Now we're down to 3 lanes, but you can imagine that cars can still go through here. We're not totally banning cars, but we're just trying to accommodate all users, right? So now we've got a crosswalk. If somebody was over here on these sidewalks on the side, they could cross presumably safely and comfortably to get to the other side. We've got some bike lanes over on the side, and the lanes are probably a little bit narrower. So these cars are not going to be speeding at really high speeds through here. So this is just one basic depiction. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what complete streets actually involve and entail. Again, there's some images of what we mean when we think about a complete streets approach. I always have to emphasize that it's not a one size fits all. It's not like a prescription that we're just like, all right, a complete street has to have X, Y, Z. No, because all communities are different, right? The needs of Manhattan, which is depicted over here on the right, may be different than small town USA, my hometown of Gordon, Indiana. But the idea is that in all places, there's a diversity of users, and you need to think about how you're going to accommodate them all. So just some of the elements that we see here, which these communities have decided they need. In the image on the left, we see some bike lanes. We see really clearly painted crosswalks in all direction. There's a bike box over on the right. We've got signals for cars, but also for pedestrians and cyclists. And you can see a diversity of users moving through there. And over on the right, we also see some of these same elements. You can see lots of crosswalks. We see bike lanes that are protected with parked cars on the left side. We see a bus lane over on the right, some pedestrian islands, and lots of signalization. And this is, again, just sort of an illustration that this community is really accommodating all users much better than in the before picture you can see at the top right over there. So again, to emphasize, it's not a one size fits all approach. Each community is going to have its own needs, but you need to think about all the users who are using and moving through an area. So some benefits of complete streets. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because I hope that you all can put it together, why this would be important. Health, if people can move around outside of a car, they can walk, they can jog, they can bicycle, it's going to lead to positive health outcomes, reductions in obesity, depression, diabetes, and other chronic diseases. Economics. This is something that we often try to point out because people push back and say, oh, this is going to cost so much money. Oh, we can't afford that. We're just a humble town. We can't. But we also point out, hey, it's not just the money you're going to be spending to build in a complete streets type way, but there are also a lot of economic benefits that come with doing things in this way. The very top, you're going to have less injuries and damage from collision and accidents. That's a big one. There also could be benefits to local businesses, for instance. People like to go to places that they can walk, they can cycle, they can hang around rather than just a stroad that only has fast food or something like that. And we've done some studies. We find that, sales, employment rates, property values can increase when you do things in a complete streets way. And the environment, this one goes without saying. Cars and traffic are bad for the environment. That's fairly simple. If you can get people to move around in ways that don't involve cars or, are more active, like walking and biking or taking transit, it's better for the environment. So how do you do this? Well, one of the big things that we really say you need to do, we advise all communities, big and small, rural, urban, east, west, north, south, central, is to create a complete streets policy. A complete streets policy is really a set of rules that are going to say, hey, we embrace the concept of complete streets and we are going to do it in our jurisdiction. All right. And there can be different forms what this policy actually looks like. It can come in the form of a resolution, a binding law or ordinance. It can be a plan. It can be an executive order. We advise everyone to create a policy and to do whatever is the strongest you can do, right? In an ideal world, it should be a binding law or ordinance. That really makes it the law and means that people have to follow it. If you can do that, that's really the gold standard. Not all places are in a position to be able to do that. There's not the support or the political dynamics there. So it might be necessary to do something a little bit less enforceable, plan, policy document, or resolution. Those can also be valuable, but they also are not necessarily mandatory. Anybody who works in this domain knows that they may sit on the shelf and not really get implemented. But the idea is you should really create a policy that demonstrates your commitment and really explains how it's going to work. This is something that we've been tracking since we really proposed the concept of complete streets about 20 years ago. And you see from this image that's been rotating through, initially it started out with a handful. Over time, different jurisdictions across the country have been adopting it. Every couple of years, we do a big sort of census of complete streets policies. We evaluate who's doing a good job, who's passed a new one, et cetera. Oh, right now, there are over 1,700 jurisdictions with policies in complete streets. I see a question about complete streets with stormwater abatement. That is something that, if a community decides to build, they can use different types of materials that would, be maybe more absorbent, or use less asphalt, frankly. Complete streets, if you're building in a way that reduces the number of lanes required, would could have an improvement for stormwater abatement. That's not my area of expertise, but there's definitely some resources and studies out there on those impacts. Thank you for that question, Karen. So anyway, policy adoption. It's been growing over time. 1,700 is a good number, but there's still a long way to go, right? I don't know the exact number of how many towns and cities there are across the country, but it's many times that. So if you're sitting in a place right now that does not have a complete streets policy, I'm talking to you. If you're sitting in a place that has a complete streets policy, I'm also talking to you, because in most places, the policies can be improved or they can be implemented much better than they currently are. So let's dig into a little bit about what makes a strong complete streets policy. Okay, so if you're somebody who does not have a policy currently and is thinking about, oh, we need one, we have a framework for complete streets policies. It has 10 elements, and this is available on our website. I'm not going to go through each element in great detail. I don't have time to do that, but you can see them here on the screen. A great complete streets policy is going to establish the commitment and vision. That's really going to make a clear commitment of why we're doing this and what do we understand by complete streets. Number two, it's going to prioritize underserved and underinvested communities. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of inequity in our transportation system. And if you don't explicitly prioritize the places that have been negatively impacted or neglected, then you're just going to replicate the same patterns over time. So when you're doing complete streets, we say, no, you start with the areas of the greatest need, the areas that have been overlooked, the areas that have been negatively impacted. Applies to all projects and phases. Complete streets should be a status quo. That should be the basic approach for all projects in cities, rather than, oh, it's something we'll do if we have enough money, or it's something we'll do if we have the time, or if there's enough people that are interested. No, it should be, that's your starting point. And related to that, it only allows clear exceptions. So we emphasize the need to really illustrate there can be exceptions, right? In some cases, it really may not be possible to take a complete streets approach, but you should really limit those to some very specific instances. Otherwise, you're going to have people asking for exemptions or exceptions for any old thing that comes up. Mandates coordination. So, of course, transportation is not done by one department or one team alone. You need to have people working across departments in city government, as well as across different hierarchies, working with state DOT, working with county, etc. Adopts excellent design guidance. So the policy itself does not usually get into, what's the appropriate lane width, or, how many bus stops should you have per certain amount of distance. But the policy should refer to the standards that will be used, either something that's been created internally or a best practice external source, such as NACTO street design. Number 7 requires proactive land use planning. So transportation and land use are very intimately connected. You really can't talk about one without the other. So the policy should also lay out not just the transportation components, but how will this affect land use in your city or town. Number 8, measures progress. You really have to measure it, right? There's a lot of different ways you can measure, but you have to do some. You can't just go out, build some projects and hope that they work, right? You really need to rigorously evaluate before, during, and after you've done your projects to know if they're really working. And they might not be working. If they're not, then you make some changes. But without that measurement, you're just sort of operating blindly. Sets criteria for choosing projects. So this is really about prioritizing alternative or active or whatever term you want to use, deprioritizing highway projects, right? Traditionally, the private cars and automobiles have really have been front and center in all development plans and discussions. This is about, you need to explicitly say, no, actually, we're prioritizing walking, biking, transit. And then creates a plan for implementation. You need to have specifics about the who, what, and when of how this plan is going to actually be implemented. As I said before, you can have some really nice, lovely language, but without some really concrete details and mechanisms to make sure it actually gets enforced, it may just sit on a shelf somewhere and collect dust. And that's not what we want. So these are the 10 elements that we look for whenever we are advising or evaluating a policy. And these can all be found on our website. I believe Amelia shared a link for that. And we've also created a tool where you can go, suppose you already have a policy. If you want to score it according to our evaluation, we have a scale 0 to 100. You can use our policy tool. It's an online thing, totally free, totally easy, user-friendly. So check out our policy evaluation tool, which Amelia has also just dropped in the chat. So that is what we consider to be a good policy. So how do you get, what else is involved, right? Policy is just, a piece of paper. So what else is required? And here is where I'm sort of transitioning into the second part of our webinar where Mike is going to tell us. But from us, we see there's 5 essential components to really making complete streets happen. One is you got to have the political will and the champions that are there, right? This is people in positions of power, as well as people, community members, residents who are really pushing for this. If nobody is, squeaky wheeling or, putting pressure, then things will just remain as they've always been. Car dominance, bike ped will be an afterthought, if at all. So you really got to have people pushing from bottom up, top down, getting people to understand the importance of this and be willing to take some risks to actually put their, for politicians to really stick their necks out there and stand up for this, because there's going to be pushback. All of you have seen, anytime you try to change the status quo, there's going to be pushback. And you, from a community perspective, have to be willing, be ready for that and how to respond to it. And you also have to have, as I said, people in power who are not afraid to say, nope, I hear you, but I believe this is important. I hear other people as well. So the second thing, policy. So that's what we just walked through. You've got the will there, get it on paper, because people in office, that'll change. Political climates will shift, priorities, funding, these things will evolve and shift over time. And if you don't have it on policy, as I said, ideally it's a law or an ordinance, then your thing may go out the window as well. Sometimes a really energetic mayor will come in and really push for complete streets, do some really cool projects for a couple of years, and then they're out of office. The next person doesn't care about it and they go out the window. So get a policy on the books. And then ideally the policy affects and changes the way that you do things internally in government departments, formally, informally. It really needs to become not just a policy, but part of the way of doing things in your city or town. And when that changes, then you can really start to do projects. Projects, this is where we're talking change in pavement, right? So we're talking about adding bike lanes or adding improving intersections, adding transit facilities. These are the things that are really going to be physical, concrete improvements to the mobility and safety of your city and town. But of course, projects by themselves are not worth that much. It only really starts, you really start to see impact when you do enough projects and you build a network, right? Because when it comes to transportation and mobility, having an isolated sidewalk or a bike lane that doesn't really lead to anywhere, that's not worth very much, right? You really need to have them connect, where people live, where they're trying to go, and allow them to move significant distances in a safe, healthy, and dignified manner. So these are the 5 things that we think this is sort of the process that that gets you from 0 to complete. So to wrap up, calls to action. So for everybody on this call, I hope you have a better understanding of complete streets, what we mean when we say that term, where it's applicable, where it's needed, and why. And please check out our website for any other, if you need a refresher, or you can email me for any questions. My email will be at the end. So the state level, and this is something I haven't really dove into. If I had more time, state departments of transportation have a big role to play here as well. Unfortunately, the most dangerous streets in our country are often state-owned highways. So even if you've got the political will at the local level, they are often constrained by the relationship with the state. So state departments of transportation have an important role to play here. They need to lead, prioritize complete streets, and work with localities. So municipalities without complete streets, if you're listening to this call in some place that does not have a complete streets on the books, we encourage you to create one. We have on our website has many resources, and we have just created with City Health a step-by-step guide to help you go from blank page to a complete streets policy. And that is Amelia has just dropped in the chat as well. This is an action guide, is what we're calling it. So please check that out. If you don't have a policy, use that guide. It'll help you create one. And if you do have a complete streets policy, as I said, implement it and improve it. There are only a few policies that we've looked at in the last 20 years that we consider perfect, 100 out of 100, that have really, threaded the needle and got it all right. And even for those places, we can't say that they have completely implemented complete streets universally throughout the city. So there's always room for improvement and growth. So even if you've got a complete streets policy, you can always revise it, improve it, upgrade. And when you reach perfection, then just let's talk about implementation and make sure you've been done all that you set out to do. So these are some calls to action, and I've given the more theoretical and the why and the what, but now I will conclude there. Emphasize complete streets for everybody. Here's my email. If you have any questions, please hit me up. Now I'm really excited to hand the mic over to Mike from Asheville, and he's going to tell us what it looks like in his neck of the woods. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Dustin. And while Mike is getting his screen share set up, I will just reiterate that folks are welcome to put questions in the Q&A, and our speakers can, now that Dustin's done speaking, thank you so much, Dustin. If you want to take a look at the questions that have already come in and respond in chat, that would be great. And we also hope to have time at the end for Q&A. So keep the questions coming, everybody. Thanks again. And Mike, over to you now.
Okay, hey, my name is Mike Sule. I am the executive director of the 501c3 nonprofit, Asheville on Bikes. And our mission is to cultivate the culture of urban and commuter riding through advocacy, education, and celebration. And I'm here today to talk to you about a specific project that we worked on, and there's going to be lots of callbacks to Dustin's presentation. Thank you so much for that, Dustin. I'm going to sort of incorporate some of your language, and we can see the parallels. But my organization, Asheville on Bikes, we worked to get a road resurfacing project to advance a more complete street treatment. Dustin showed a picture of a streetscape where it had 2 lanes in either direction, and that's exactly what Merriman Avenue looked like prior to the treatment. I want to give you a little bit of information, a little background information on Asheville. Unfortunately, much like Dustin talked about in his graphics, Asheville is very much like that. We have a culture of carnage on our public rights-of-way. In the state of North Carolina, there are only 2 types of roads. There are city and state maintained roads. There are no county roads. And unfortunately, the city of Asheville consistently ranks as one of the worst cities in North Carolina relative to road safety. And that's a study from NCDOT in 2020. I would say that Asheville has stagnated as a bronze level bicycle friendly community. We first received that designation back in 2020, and we have not moved from bronze. People for Bikes, which ranks cities around the country, out of 100 points, Asheville has achieved 8. So we have a lot of work to do in elevating safety and dignity on our public rights of way. Oh no, why won't it? Oh, there we go. And so to take it back from even a little closer from the city to Merriman Avenue, prior to the road resurfacing project, the Merriman US Highway 25, at the point where it ran through Asheville, had 150 higher rate crashes on Merriman compared to similar roadways like it across the state. For every 10 crashes on similar roads, Merriman would experience 15. Approximately 23% of crashes on Merriman involve an injury or property damage. Estimates total of more than $7 million annually. And on average, Merriman experienced 13 crashes every month. So this road was coming up for a resurfacing project. And at the beginning of this, we were really excited because we do have a complete streets policy. And we were like, okay, this is going to be a great opportunity to at least have the conversation about elevating safety and dignity on this road and moving to a more of a complete street treatment. Unfortunately, in 2021, the city and the NCDOT agreed not to consider a road reconfiguration as a part of this road resurfacing project. And in March of that year, a discussion of the potential road reconfiguration was pulled from the city's Multimodal Transportation Commission. And the Multimodal Transportation Commission is an advisory commission made up of citizens who review street projects and policy and will vote to give their guidance to the members of city council. They were also told at the time that Merriman would not be included in any future multimodal transportation agendas. So the city and the state were prepared to take the existing stripe lines, right, 150 more collisions than any road like it, pull up all the old asphalt and just continue with the same old, same old. It speaks to the culture of climate. But we did have the opportunity of public comment, and we had a local resident, Gaia, agreed to give public comment at the beginning of the Multimodal Transportation Commission about the harm she experienced attempting to cross Merriman Avenue. And Dustin, in his presentation, he mentioned champions and the need for champions. And of course, Asheville on Bikes, we are unapologetic supporters of complete streets. Everyone hears from us a lot of the time. And so I do want to take a minute and appreciate Gaia and play her public comments and how powerful it is when she talked about her experience and the impact of that carnage had on her life.
I recently was told by a friend about your upcoming meeting on March the 24th and thought it was very important to share my experience with you. My name is Michelle. I'm a 65-year-old young woman and I moved to Asheville 3 years ago. I absolutely love Asheville and I'm thrilled to be living here. I found a beautiful apartment in a lovely neighborhood, which is centrally located to everything I need in walking distance. On November the 11th, I was on my way home from an evening walk on the west side of Chestnut, crossing over Merriman to the other side of Chestnut. I had the walking right, and a woman also on Chestnut turned her car and struck me in the crosswalk. She was found to be at fault. Based on witnesses, I was hit and then rolled off her car and hit the pavement. The police, the paramedics, etc. were there, and I was taken to the hospital. Many tests were done and taken. I sustained multiple facial traumas, a banged up left knee, busted bottom lip, fractured nose, knocked out front teeth and semi-dislocated right jaw, a concussion from traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and a lot more finer details. It's now 4 months later, and although I have improved a lot, I'm not better, but I'm functioning a lot better. I have seen the traumatic doctors, a neurologist, an internal medicine doctor, an orthodontist, a dentist, an ophthalmologist, massage therapist, and taken many medical tests. I have not been able to work or eat properly or sleep well. It seems my whole life has been turned upside down and it's challenging, but I know I will completely recover in time. I would like to share how unsafe I have felt about Merriman and Chestnut all these years since I moved here. I just never thought something like this would happen to me. I want you to know that the status quo on Merriman is very dangerous and expensive. Please use your authority to recommend changes for Merriman that make it safe for many people like me who love to walk. Please, I beg of you, this is so important. I am heartbroken and at the same time so grateful to be alive. Thank you for listening. I hope you will make this presentation and hear it at your meeting.
So although Merriman Avenue, the discussion of Merriman Avenue was not going to be on the multimodal agenda, Gaia gave her public comment. She was hit by a car while crossing in a crosswalk with the existing facilities, and she experienced a traumatic brain injury. She broke her hip. It cost her a lot of money. It created a lot of trauma in her life and so forth. And she appealed to the Multimodal Transportation Commission during the public comment, saying, hey, I understand there's a resurfacing project coming up. I please hope that you work together to create a safer condition. And so, although this is a very unflattering picture of our hardworking Multimodal Transportation Commission, I wanted to share this screenshot because you can see the issue was not on the agenda, but if you look down at the timestamp, the members of Multimodal Transportation Commission ended up speaking about this issue and the existing conditions on Merriman for close to an hour. And then at that point, one of the assistant city managers came on and said, hey, members of Multimodal, City of Asheville, let's reach out to NCDOT and maybe we can form a working group and consider if we can make Merriman a safer place for people to be. And so that was the beginning of elevating the discussion and activating those champions and activating the leadership to take on the challenge of Merriman Avenue. Again, Dustin referred to existing policy and the idea that if you don't keep that policy engaged, you are absolutely right. It is going to collect dust and people are going to be continued to be injured on our public rights of way. One of the things that we did to move this project forward is we worked to create our own audit and study of Merriman. And from one of the pages on the right, the image on the right with all the green checks, we identified existing plans and policies that exist at the state level, the regional level, the federal level, why DOT and the city of Asheville at least had to consider a road reconfiguration as part of the resurfacing project. So having that policy is a very important thing, and having those champions is also a very important thing. And then in moving the project forward, we were able to share, this is NCDOT's data, throughout the community and really ask a value question. Is over 1,000 collisions a year, is that worth it? 27 bicycle pedestrian crashes. Is this the type of city in the community that we want to live in? Are these existing conditions the values that we hold? And we went around to the community and we gave them that value proposition. That's really how we talked about this project. This is a matter of what we value in our community. And then DOT and the city, they worked together and they said, hey, we're going to put out a survey to ask people if this is the direction that we should go. And this can be viewed a lot of different ways. One way is that it's kind of a red herring, and really 150% more collisions, one every other day. And we are going to put out a survey to the public and ask them if they feel that it is appropriate to make this road a safer condition. So we did push back on that a little bit, but we also understood that the process is the process. And so we went along with it. And we, knowing that people are very busy, that we are the wonks, we are the transportation geeks and nerds, we wanted to make it really easy for people to participate and digest this information. And we gave them a lot of guidance and new types of things to think about. And we pushed this out into the community, and it gained a lot of public support. Not total public support, but it gained enough public support. 59% of people surveyed ended up supporting this project. Dustin also referenced pushback, right? And so when you are going to get that pushback, and during that phase, it's very important to stay engaged with the public, the leaders, and the press. And when the project moved forward and they began to implement it, construction, a lot of people began to get rather upset about the delays and the congestion and so forth. And so my sort of mantra was, implementation is construction. Nobody likes construction. Construction isn't the project. Stay engaged, even when it's uncomfortable. And that is a really important thing to do. And so we moved through the construction phase, and we are now on to studying, right? As Dustin referenced, we have to measure what matters, measure the work. And we're so appreciative of the DOT measuring the impacts along the way. And so far this study came out in June. So we have 23% drop in collisions with injury dropped by 30%, frontal crashes by 55%, and cycling uses up 269%. Motor vehicle speeds are down between 3 and 5. So it's really an insignificant amount of time that you are spending in a car on the highway. You're not delayed 5 minutes, 3 minutes, anything like that. It's like 20 to 14 seconds. So we're really using this as an opportunity to share with everyone in our community over and over, stop believing that the existing conditions are an acceptable risk, that those existing conditions are just the price of moving about in our communities. Indeed, there is a better future in grasp. And then here, just another slide of, up 2 to 14 seconds traveling through. And this is directly pulled from NCDOT's preliminary study. And then moving forward, every opportunity is an opportunity to cultivate the champions. So it's not just about slowing down cars, but we have to learn and welcome people back to corridors where they have been uninvited to participate before. So that's a really important thing in keeping support of the businesses. They weathered that construction, but to activate the street and show people that they are welcome to participate along this corridor in new types of ways. And I think that's a really important piece of it. The other piece is that, success leaves clues. And this is sort of part of a celebration that we did. And we are working, at that time, we were working on other projects. We were working on another complete street project along College and Patton, which runs through the city. And so we wanted to highlight that, right? Use the momentum of one success and move it right into another success. Because as Dustin said, it's about ultimately creating a network of safe and reliable dignity. And so as we win and we plan advocacy campaigns, we really need to be thinking about the future connectivity and the network, and the momentum of one success leading right into the next. I would be totally remiss to say that our work made everything better on Merriman Avenue, and the work continues. Unfortunately, last Saturday night, I was home at a cookout, and I got a text message. This is like the photo, and the very intersection where Gaia was first hit, the person who was the inciting incident for improving conditions on Merriman. Unfortunately, another citizen was hit at that intersection. Also, unfortunately, when we got the road diet, the reconfiguration, this section of the road was not included in that road reconfiguration. So you can see the 2-lane in each direction configuration. So even as we move things forward and we activate it, everyone, and we plan by the policy, and we make a significant win, and there are more to have. We have a lot of work to do, and we just have to keep going and going and going. And that is my work on a complete street project, Merriman Avenue. My name is Mike Sule, Executive Director of Asheville on Bikes. And if you'd like to email me or reach out, please do. I'm more than happy to talk about all of this stuff. And I will put a plug in for the League of American Cyclists. And I hope to be able to meet you at the upcoming Bike Summit. It is always an inspiring experience that I look forward to attending each and every year. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks again, Dustin. Those were both excellent and really great to hear an example of how this all plays out on the ground. And just as Mike was finishing up, I put a bunch of links in the chat that he had provided of some of their reports going back to 2022 and survey data and crash data. So I encourage you all to bookmark those or look out for the email from us with the recording and the slides. We'll include all of these links there as well so that you can reference them later. But I think it's just such a great model for how local advocates can get involved and sort of see through that, you know, just because the policy exists on paper, it still takes a lot of sort of local force to make it happen sometimes, and years of hard work. So thank you, Mike, for your ongoing advocacy there. And since you mentioned the summit, I'm just going to put another link in the chat to plug that. The National Bike Summit is our annual conference in Washington, D.C. every March. And we will be opening registration soon, and our request for proposals is open currently. So just plugging that since Mike mentioned it. So on to Q&A. We do have a little bit of time for Q&A, and thanks to Dustin for already tackling some. There was one that you actually answered in writing that I wanted to discuss for the sake of the recording, which was the Vision Zero question. Where does Vision Zero work its way into this discussion? Is it a complete streets policy first and then Vision Zero, or the other way around, or both together? So Dustin, if you don't mind sort of sharing your response out loud for folks, because I think that's a really interesting discussion.
Yes, absolutely. So just to clear the air, we are friends with Complete Streets and Vision Zero are best friends. They work very well together. There's no conflict or rivalry or anything like that. So don't think that like, oh no, we're in Team Vision Zero, we're Team Complete Streets. For different reasons, different places have found it better to go one direction or the other. That's fine. But we also encourage anywhere possible to do both, right? So we've seen a lot of really great work in places like Madison, Wisconsin, where they've simultaneously, basically over the same, couple of year period, done work on Complete Streets, done work Vision Zero. And as I said, they have a lot of, mutual goals. Complete Streets for us, we focus on safety, but we also focus on other things like land use, economic development, things like that aren't just focused on the safety aspect. But if that's the area that you want to focus on, that's totally fine. Right now, we are working with the city of Durham, North Carolina, who is completing a Vision Zero action plan, and we are working with them. We say, hey, it'd be great if you had a complete streets policy, but since you're already doing this thing on Vision Zero, let's talk and see how we can kind of help, incorporate as much of the things that we consider to be important elements for complete streets into Vision Zero. By the way, if you're in the Durham area and want to come into a workshop at the end of this month, write me and I'll get you that information. Does that cover it, Amelia?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, my mute button was hidden. That's great. And Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add about Vision Zero and whether that has played into your work in Asheville at all.
We have a complete streets policy and a Vision Zero policy, and so I mean they work hand in hand in tandem. So I would encourage everyone to read up and familiarize yourself with both. It's kind of a both and approach.
Great.
Totally.
Yeah, and I see a new question just came in via the chat that I feel like builds on some of the other questions that we saw several variations on of we saw questions about, you know, staff turnover at the city when there is a complete streets policy on the books, but it's not being implemented because, you know, the person that pushed it through is no longer there, or just for any number of reasons, it's sitting on the shelf and collecting dust, or it's just been failing to be implemented. And then the newest question that came in was, how much citizen participation are you seeing the successful complete streets and Vision Zero policies? So for both of you, I think, what is that balance, and how do you make sure, which, you know, I recognize the entire webinar is on this topic, but anything else to add?
I would say one of the things about, like, where do you go, either creating a policy or getting the one that's on the shelf more active, I would say is really think broadly. Coalitions can really make changes here, and it's great to have bicycle advocates, but it's great if you can also get pedestrian advocates, and even some other areas that you might not even typically look for work in this area. One of our supporters and strongest, you know, advocates in this area is AARP. They do a lot of great work, or American Heart Association, American Cancer Society. So some of these organizations or groups of people, you know, that you might not think is like automatic, oh yeah, that's the go-to. You build a coalition of people who work with youth, who work with seniors, people who work with people with disabilities, bicyclists, pedestrians. There, you can build a really strong coalition, and that's going to have so much more impact when you go to decision makers, when you go to the press, when you go to do events. You're going to have a much broader and stronger impact. So I would say think, you know, sort of intersectionally, and build a coalition. Go in a group when you're doing these things is always a good approach.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We work with AARP. They have a great grant program for quick builds, and if your city's in that way and you have a complete streets policy, a quick build is a great way to go in that direction. Asheville on Bikes, we've also worked with the United Stroke Alliance and the Asheville City Schools Foundation as well. So there are lots. And if you notice in my presentation, I really wasn't talking about bike facilities so much, right? It was really oriented towards the pedestrian experience, because when we design for the most vulnerable road user, we make it safe for everyone. So instead of thinking about, you know, straight lines of like a certain type of facility, thinking about the intersections and where things cross. Additionally, you know, the work also changes. Dustin referenced, you know, how like the political life is cyclical. And so sometimes when you have a city council or a mayor who is completely on board with complete streets, my work sort of changes quite a bit, because then staff is in line and it's like, let's roll this thing out. But then we also will go through an iteration like we are right now. Our city council is really divided on complete streets policy. And so that my work therefore changes quite a bit. And so therefore the work of the citizen changes as well. So there's nothing really stagnant or fixed in this work. It's really dynamic and quite shifty at times.
Thanks. And I just added a link to the chat of the AARP Bike Audit Toolkit, which is something we developed in partnership with AARP last year. And it's a companion to their Walk Audit Toolkit, which has existed for a few years. And both of these are really great tools for citizens to get more involved. Now, with just a couple minutes left, I'm going to share my screen one more time just to help everybody Reiterate one more time the links to go to learn more about all of the organizations you've heard about today. Definitely encourage you all to learn more about Smart Growth America and all the work they're doing around complete streets and Asheville on bikes. And again, we'll share all the links that we put in the chat. And then here at the League, our bicycle friendly community program, complete streets is one of the first things we ask about on our bicycle friendly community application. So I want to thank our speakers again for helping share not only what makes a good policy, but what helps turn that policy into actual action on the ground, so that people can see the results in safety and increased ridership and usability for everyone of all modes. And with that, since we only have a minute left, I apologize to the folks whose questions we didn't get to, but I do want to plug our next webinar, which is happening next Wednesday, September 25th. You can learn more at bikeleague.org/webinars, and this will be a release of a report that we did in partnership with Lime, looking at a bunch of data at the city level for 2 different cities that use Lime as one of their bike share vendors, looking at their micromobility data and showing the results of what happens when a city puts in new bike lanes or new bike parking. How much does it change ridership and usage? So super interesting results that we're really excited to share. So please join us next Wednesday for that webinar. And then finally, I want to thank all of our sponsors who have made these webinar series possible. And huge thank you again to Dustin and to Mike for sharing your time and your expertise today. And thanks to all of our attendees for being here. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing briefly and just close us out to again say thank you and have a great rest of your day, everybody.